Good evening and welcome to you at home and welcome to our invited guests at Avalon here in Wellington. Special visitors for a special occasion for a very special man. It was on this day 50 years ago today that an unknown beekeeper from Tuakau uttered those famous words that were so essentially Kiwi, "Well, George, we knocked the bastard off." Tonight we are here to celebrate the towering achievement of that man, Sir Edmund Hillary, who, with the Sherpa Tenzing Norgay, scaled the world's highest mountain half a century ago. We're here to honour the man described by many as the greatest living New Zealander. With me tonight in the studio at Avalon are many of Sir Edmund Hillary's friends and a gathering of prominent New Zealanders who want to mark this once-in-a-lifetime anniversary. And for this truly historic occasion, we're coming to you from both Wellington and also Kathmandu live, where a virtual who's who of the climbing world has assembled, including members of Tenzing Norgay's family, as well as Sir Edmund's sister and daughter. Standing by in the Nepalese capital of Kathmandu is Mark Sainsbury. Hello, Mark.
Thanks, Paul, and welcome everyone at home to here in Kathmandu, an extraordinary event for an extraordinary man. And that man, of course, Sir Edmund Hillary, arriving here now with his wife, Lady Hillary, at the British Embassy here in Kathmandu. And of course, was from the British Embassy 50 years ago, with the most famous of expeditions left, and which led to the conquering of Everest. Tonight we're here to honour the man who got to the top along with Tenzing Norgay, and along with him and his wife here at the embassy we have many of the people who mean the most to Sir Edmund Hillary. His family, his friends, fellow climbers, and most important of all, the extended Hillary family, the Sherpas, the people with whom he has spent so much time and so much a large part of his life, especially over the last 40 years. And here lining up to meet him, a lot of the Sherpas, particularly from the Himalayan Trust, people who Sir Edmund has worked with over the last 40 years. And what we see now is the traditional welcome with the cutters, the prayer scarves, a sign of respect and of welcome to the man who they call the Barasab, the big man. There's been a lot of pressure on Sir Edmund Hillary to be in many places tonight. This is the first event of this 20-night celebration on the day. And it's one that he chose to spend with us, with you at home, and with his friends here in Nepal. There's, as I said, his family, June's family. There is a lot of people, the supporters, people who've worked with him over the years, here to make this a special event. And that pressure to be elsewhere, the rest of the expedition meeting in London, there are events in New Zealand they would have loved to have had him there as well, but he chose to come to Nepal. And this, of course, is typical of wherever he's been in the last week. There are so many people who want to pay their respects, who want to say thanks. And as I say, with the prayer scarves, this means of respect and welcome to someone who has been such a large part of Sherpa culture over 40 years. A lot of the people here, lined up here tonight, have been products of that, have been through the Hillary schools, have been on to high school, universities. We have doctors, PhDs, pilots, and they are living testament to the work that he has done since conquering Everest 50 years ago.
I gather he's in Nepal at the moment, and since communications have greatly improved since 1953, I'm delighted to take this opportunity to send him a message of greetings and renewed congratulations.
A special message from the Duke of Edinburgh. Tonight we're going to be hearing from some of the many people who have known Sir Edmund over the years or who have been inspired by his example. Now we're also raising some money tonight for the Sir Edmund Hillary Trust. Now this organisation's been founded to continue the wonderful work that Sir Edmund has spent much of his life working on, both here in New Zealand and in Nepal. In this country, the Trust is raising money for various projects to help young New Zealanders, including the establishment of a second outdoor pursuit centre in the Auckland region, which will complement the centre already running in the central North Island. Now, if you'd like to make a donation tonight, we would welcome that. You should phone 0900 Everest, or if you're old-fashioned, here's the number, 0900 383 73 78. $20 will be added onto your telephone account if you do so. Later in the programme, the Prime Minister is going to be with us. She'll make a special announcement of a further financial boost to Sir Edmund's Himalayan Trust. Well, amongst the many friends of Edmund Hillary's who are with us tonight is Graham Dingle. Now, recently Graham Dingle was quoted as saying that Sir Edmund Hillary is to New Zealand what George Washington is to the Americans. Like Sir Edmund, Graham Dingle is a climber and an explorer. He's accompanied Hillary on a number of adventures over the last 30 years. First of all, what do you mean he's like Washington to us?
Well, I think every nation needs an icon like that, Paul, and you know, we've probably had many before nationhood, you know, the great Maori leaders, but I think Ed kind of epitomises to us what we would like to be as New Zealanders.
You've been out in the mountains with him, haven't you, on many an occasion. What's he like up there in the mountains, in the hills, on the treks?
Oh, he's wonderful. He's full of humour. You know, he's always happy in the hills.
Extraordinary physical strength?
I think he had extraordinary physical strength. I suspect in 1953 there was no one that could carry what he could carry at high altitude.
27 kilograms on that last walk up to the summit. Yeah. How big was what he did that day? Tell us, remind us.
Well, I think it was huge because we need to remember that no one had been that high before. People didn't know how much fluid you had to take in to stay fit. They didn't even know if they took their oxygen masks off if they would die. So it was an extraordinary thing to do. And he did it with panache. It wasn't, I mean, he did it relatively easily. And I suspect, although the British may not say so, that he was really the last string. He and Tenzing, had they not got up, the expedition probably would have failed.
Graham Dingle, thank you very much. What a story it is, the story of Hillary and Everest, the man and the mountain. On the screen, just over there, which you are seeing now, on the screen, is it behind me? No, it's not actually, but anyway, on the screen, big screen we've got, we have, yes, it is behind me, we have Mount Everest, which was beamed to us a short time ago from the Himalayas. So that's, those pictures are just hours old. That's what Everest looks like today. The Sherpa people call the mountain Chomolungma, goddess mother of the world. Sherpas speak of the need to respect her. They say, you do not really conquer Everest. No human being can conquer Everest. The goddess mountain either allows you to climb her or disallows you. You must be humble before her. In 1953, Everest represented the last great obvious physical challenge facing mankind, the highest place on the face of the earth.
The height of Everest was established in 1852. Once it became known, the mountain became a magnet for climbers from all around the world. From 1921, successive expeditions tried to get to the top. They all failed. One of the most spectacular of which was the attempt by the British climbers George Mallory and Andrew Irvine in 1924. The Mallory-Irvine assaults always fascinated people, the tantalising question being, did they get to the top before they perished?
Well, of course, that is the question. Do you think that Mallory and Irvine did get to the top?
Well, Mark, my feeling is, I'm looking around the summit, there was certainly no sign of it, and also in talking to some of the old timers, most of them really felt that Mallory had not reached the summit. To me, Mallory was a heroic figure, and it doesn't really matter much to me whether he got to the top or not. He was the inspiration of Everest in those days. You know, I was sometimes asked by a reporter that if Mallory was proved to have reach the summit first. How would I feel about that? And I would say, well, you know, for 40 years, the media has made me into a heroic figure. And now, after 40 years, if they prove me wrong, I can't really complain about it.
Well, that's very generous of you. But people also very generous about you on this occasion. We've had messages coming in from all around the world over the last couple of weeks from people wanting to send their goodwill message to Sir Edmund on this momentous anniversary.
It's a great moment. I know you're out there in Kathmandu. I just wanted to say that the climbing of Everest remains, for me, the single greatest act of achievement and the fulfillment of a challenge in my lifetime. I've never been to the Himalaya. I'm hoping to get there this year. Thank you, Tenzing, and all the people involved in the expedition for bringing home to me the danger, the difficulty, but the excitement, the challenge, and the gigantic grandeur of the Himalayas as well.
Sir Edmund, when I was 9, you climbed the highest mountain in the world. You are an amazing example to all New Zealanders and to all people in the world that a quiet gentleman with that incredible courage can do and influence so many people. And for all of my life, I have known that you've been in the back of my mind as to try and achieve the best that I could in the most dignified way. And I admire you. You are my hero.
Wonderful words from Dame Kerry Tikana about Sir Edmund Hillary. Dame Catherine Tizard herself was saying only earlier to me, Ed never speaks ill of anyone, he never speaks down to anyone. Welcome back. In 1953, there were 13 members of the British expedition on Everest, along with 24 Sherpas. Now, 7 of the original British team are still alive, and apart from Hillary, they're all gathering in London tonight for a special celebration with the Queen and Prince Philip. And amongst them is Sir Edmund's close friend and the other New Zealander on the climb, a man who went extremely high up Everest with the Hillary, and to the world at large perhaps as the forgotten hero, one of the forgotten heroes of that expedition, George Lowe, and he sent Sir Edmund this message.
Greetings. We're all here, and we know that you're away over there with the Sherpas, and in a great part, I wish I was out there with you too. But we are having a marvellous celebration of the 50th anniversary, and we look forward to seeing you in a few days' time.
Now, you two were good mates, Ed, weren't you? I mean, you and George Lowe. And he was also another beekeeper's son.
Yes, he was. His father was a beekeeper, as my father was. They were really farmers, I suppose, in general. And both George and I were brought up to be farmers' sons. And as a consequence, you know, we weren't very sophisticated, perhaps, but we were strong and energetic. But George was a really good ice climber, and I certainly learnt a great deal of my skills from Harry Ayres.
And of course, George Lowe and Ed Hillary, both very plain, straight-talking people. And like many great heroes, Hillary had humble beginnings. He was born Edmund Percy Hillary on the 20th of July 1919 and grew up in this house during the Depression in Tuakau, south of Auckland. It was a lonely childhood. He had few friends, and younger than the others at school, was told by his phys ed teacher he was a hopeless case. Between helping with the family beekeeping business and a wartime stint on Catalina flying boats, Hillary's love of climbing began to emerge. During the 40s and into the 50s, Hillary's mountaineering skills grew. While climbing in the Himalayas with George Lowe, the two Kiwis were noticed by prominent English climber Eric Shipton and invited back for a recce of Everest in 1952. After the 52 trip, Shipton was dropped as expedition leader and replaced by Colonel John Hunt. A military man, Hunt then dumped the Kiwis as they wouldn't be in England for the build-up. The rest of the party mutinied, knowing Hillary and Lowe were the only experienced ice climbers. Hunt gave in. The Kiwis were back on board. The 53 expedition set off from Kathmandu, embarking on a 280-kilometre trek to the base of the unconquered mountain, taking with them 15 tonnes of supplies, providing much of the manpower for this and later feats on Everest with the local Sherpas. Among them, Tenzing Norgay, one of the most experienced Everest climbers of the time. Of course, Sir Ed, I mean, Tenzing got very close, hadn't he, the year before with the Swiss? They got close, but they didn't get up there. So did you know much about him before you met him?
Well, I had never met him before until I arrived in Kathmandu. But immediately it was impossible not to warm to Tenzing. He was tall, he was extremely good looking, he was very strong, and of course he had this background of technical ability, but also he had a charming smile, and it was impossible not to like him.
Did he have the same sort of resolve that you had, that you both wanted to get there?
I don't think there was any question at all. Most of the Sherpas were really people who were doing a job in those days. They were carrying loads and doing it extremely well. But Tenzing also had that desire and urge to reach the summit. So he was a formidable companion.
I mean, sadly, he passed away in 1986, but you did see him when you were in India.
Well, yes, the last couple of years of his life, I saw a great deal of Tenzing and talked to him quite extensively. In fact, I probably talked to him a great deal more than he did to his sons, who were all being educated in America. And in those days, Tenzing perhaps was a slightly sad person. He used to say to me, you know, you have done so many things for my people, and I have done nothing. And I'd say, that's not true, Tenzing. You have educated thousands of young Indian climbers to enjoy the out of doors and to learn to climb. But he just wouldn't accept that. He felt that he had failed in helping his own people.
So Tenzing left his own legacy, and as has done Sir Ed, and we're now back to the studio in Wellington with Paul.
Good, Mark. Now, what we got here is the New Zealand $5 note, and on it, of course, is a portrait of a living man, Sir Edmund Hillary. Now, the man who did make the decision to put Sir Edmund's face on the currency was the Reserve Bank governor at the time, Dr. Don Brash. Why did you want to do this?
Well, initially, Paul, we did not want to do it. We were told that no country in the world put a living person on a banknote unless they were head of state.
Yeah.
And of course, Ed Hillary wasn't a head of state, but he was very much alive. So the initial strong advice I got was, don't put him on the banknote. But New Zealanders overwhelmingly said they wanted him on the banknote. I had a so-called dinner party test. I would ask New Zealanders who should be on the banknote, and almost always Ed Hillary's name was the first one mentioned.
Why is he so special? Why has he grown so big to us?
Well, I'm not sure, but he's clearly the best known New Zealander any place. And I think, as your earlier interviewee said, he epitomises everything that's good about New Zealand. He's achieved astonishing things: Everest, Antarctic, High Commissioner in India, raised money for Nepalese orphans and so on. Yeah. That's the very best characteristics of New Zealanders.
I mean, there are some risks, aren't they? With no disrespect intended to Sir Ed, but there are some risks about putting a living person on the banknote, aren't there?
Indeed, that's right. We decided that that risk was well worth taking in this particular case.
Stay with us as our tribute to Sir Edmund Hillary continues. 50 years to the day it is since his ascent of Everest, and our programme will continue shortly. Another tribute.
Sir Edmund Hillary, congratulations on your 50 years. That is just unbelievable and awesome, and I have pure respect.
As a Brit, I would just like to thank the Kiwis for producing craggy old Ed Hillary, because he's the greatest, and just we Brits glow in the results of what he did and are grateful.
Hi, Grandpa Ed. We'd really love love to be in Kathmandu with you on this special day where you made history, but not only that, you made huge changes in people's lives by building schools and hospitals, and that's what really makes us proud. So from all of your grandchildren, we'd like to say thank you and that we're very lucky to have such a special man as our grandfather.
Expressions of love from the children of Peter Hillary. Welcome back to On Top of the World, and welcome to Sir Howard Morrison. When do you remember first becoming aware of the name Hillary? I mean, how did it?
I just left Charter College and I was actually attending the Higher School of Learning, Whakatū Freezing Works. And
were you on the chain?
I mean, no, well, not far from the chain.
Yes.
But who could forget that moment? And but who was this man called Hillary?
Was it big news?
Oh, huge. I mean, the fact that he was a beekeeper sort of is stimulating enough for anybody who comes from the bush and says, what am I going to be? A beekeeper on top of the world? Man, has a sting about it, hasn't it?
You sat with him on a DC-3 once as a young man, didn't you?
Well, about 6 months after, he was returning from Weber and I was going down to Christchurch and on a DC-3 and I'm sitting there and this huge man is across the... And how do you approach this huge man that's knocked off Everest? I just stood there and I sat there in awe, yeah.
What have you got there? This is something very special that was made especially for Sir Ed Hillary. It's a tuku tuku. Can you explain it?
I'd like to explain first that mountains are precious spiritually and part of our mythology to enjoy for all New Zealanders, but in particular to Maori. And of course, last year, we wanted him to attend the Maori Sports Awards in Taupo, and Tumu Te Heuhea was going to be the toast of the host, but he couldn't make it because he was going down to his granddaughter's graduation in Dunedin. So us mountains went to Muhammad, and us mountains were Tatairangi Kahu, representing Mount Taupiri, Tumu Te Heuhea, representing Tongariro, humble Sir H, representing Nongataha, and the late and great Sir John Tuday, representing Mongopoatu.
But this was made especially, carved especially for his red. Now,
yes, by a man called Spock from Tuhoe Land. And this depicts base camp, next stop, South Col, eventually up. There's the head. Can you see it? There's the head there.
Yeah.
And the feathers, the ultimate pinnacle, he's conquered.
And you presented this to Sir Ed. He was very moved by it. It's beautifully carved, Sir Howard.
Well, let me tell you this, that the twisting is just going through the rigours of, it depicts the rigours of actually making that epic journey. And it also can symbolise a Maori version of the ice pick.
Sir Howard Morrison, thank you very much. Sir Edmund's had an impact on so many of us over so many years, men and women, Māori and Pākehā, young and old.
At the high school in Sir Edmund's hometown of Tuakau this week, they're learning about Hillary's achievements, just as students have done in New Zealand for half a century. One of the students there, third former Ahmad Daji, had a question he wanted to ask Sir Edmund.
Were you ever scared when you were climbing Mount Everest?
I mean, that's a pretty good question, isn't it? Were you scared climbing Everest?
I wasn't too scared most of the time. I was so determined that we would overcome the problems. And you know, the terrain on Everest, the ice and snow, was the sort of thing that George Lowe and I were very familiar with and pretty expert at.
Does anything ever scare you?
Well, my wife scares me at times.
Well, and she's here with us, but which is probably safe for you, Paul.
Yes, it's a great relief, I'm sure. Not really at all. However, it is very easy to forget half a century on just how perilous climbing Mount Everest really is, and indeed still is. In the 50 years since Hillary and Tenzing first reached the summit, roughly 1,700 people have followed in their footsteps. Could have been another 20 today. They're going at it at the moment. And 177 people have died trying to climb Mount Everest. 120 bodies remain on the mountain.
One of the worst tragedies on Everest occurred in 1996. By that year, adventure tourism was well established in the Himalayas. Climbers paid up to $60,000 for a guide to get them to the top of the world's highest mountain. New Zealander Rob Hall ran a successful mountain guiding business in Nepal. He'd made a name for himself by climbing the world's 7 highest peaks in 1 year and was widely regarded as a talented and level-headed climber. On that day in May 1996, 3 parties set off from the higher camps at the same time. And then the weather changed dramatically for the worse. Rob Hall and 8 others died that day. American climber Beck Weathers was left for dead, and he survived by what might only be described as a miracle.
The thing that requires the spark and makes an individual like Hillary and like Tenzing different than the rest of us is they have that willingness to go into the unknown, to have that imagination and have the courage to go into some place where you have no idea what awaits you.
Unlike Mallory's earlier expedition, Hunt and his team would be attacking the summit from the south. Starting at base camp at the foot of Everest, the team had to haul tons of supplies up to successively higher camps, the last of these located at 26,000 feet. This involved the party making its way up from the Khumbu Valley through the treacherous icefall, across the western Coombe to the Lhotse Face, and finally up the South Col to the summit. Many climbers have followed this route over the last 50 years, but in 1953, nobody knew whether this approach would get a team all the way to the summit. Many people are unaware that the first climbers chosen to try for the summit were not Hillary and Tenzing. Instead, British climbers Charles Evans and Tom Bourdillon were chosen. However, they were hindered by a fresh fall of snow, which made their progress painfully slow. Only a few hundred feet below the summit, they were forced to turn back. By the time they staggered into Camp 8, they were near the point of collapse. Hillary and Tenzing were next.
Evans and Bourdillon turned back. They didn't go on. What would have you done? If you were there, do you think you could have turned back?
Well, it's always hard to judge what one would do, when other people have perhaps failed and making the final thing. But I'm inclined to think maybe we would have pushed on.
Why did Hunt then choose you and Tenzing as the preferred ones? You were the most likely ones to get there.
Well, I think there was no doubt at all that George Lowe and I were hoping that we would be the couple who would push towards the summit. But I don't think John Hunt liked the idea of just having 2 New Zealanders on the summit. So I looked around for someone ready to replace George Lowe. And Tenzing was clearly the person who was fittest and most determined. So we climbed together and approved a very good combination. So up the mountain we went, and on we kept going. I remember getting halfway up to the South Col, and the snow was very soft, and I felt very dangerous in the avalanche conditions. And I turned to Tenzing and I said to him, "What do you think, Tenzing?" And he said, I said, will we continue on this route? And he just waited for a moment, and in typical Sherpa style, he said, just as you like.
So with Hillary and Tenzing, John Hunt had his crack team. The only question was, could they do it? On the morning of May the 28th, 1953, Ed and Tenzing set off up the mountain. They knew that time was running out. The end of the climbing season was getting near, and soon the weather would make another assault impossible. The two positioned themselves higher than anyone had ever spent a night before. With so little oxygen, it was a restless, miserable time. Much of the night was spent melting snow. The British realised dehydration wrecked previous attempts. Hillary was determined not to make the same mistake. The next day, May the 29th, they set off for the summit.
Good evening, Sir Edmund and Lady June. We just wanted to say hi to you from the set of The Lord of the Rings. As you can see, we're shooting some more shots for The Return of the King, and we're really sorry that we can't be with you in person tonight. You know, we're in the business of telling the story of fictional heroes. In our case, a little hobbit who climbs up a mountain. But you climbed the mountain for real, Sir Edmund, and that makes you a genuine hero, and we're really proud of you. So from the set of The Lord of the Rings, we just wanted to send you our congratulations.
You knocked the bastard off! Woo!
Hello, Sir Edmund. Peter Fitzsimons here. You probably don't remember me, but I count it as one of the great privileges of my life to have been able to interview you 8 years ago. It was an extraordinary story. I was so impressed to have met you and to have been able to interview you. I put it together in a book called Everyone But Farlap, face to face with the best of Australian sport. Of course, you're not Australian, but can I say, in Australia, we wish you were. Not only that, we wish you well. You've led an extraordinary life. Congratulations not only on the achievement of being the first to get to the top of Mount Everest, but on the way, the magnificent way, charitable way and humble way you've lived your life since. Good luck. Thank you.
Well, you must know you've made it now. You're getting praise from the Australians, Sir Ed. Listen, I want you to tell us now something, and you must have been asked this, I don't know how many thousand times before, but just take us through those last moments as you headed towards the top.
Well, Tenzing and I reached the south summit of Everest, and then we looked along the summit ridge, and I wasn't too terrified by the look. It looked to me like a really good alpine ridge, but of course it was at a great height. Anyway, I dived down onto the slope and cut stepped my way along, with Tenzing coming along behind and backing up. And then halfway along we reached this step in the rock, which nowadays is called the Hillary step. And it looked quite difficult to me as to how we were to climb it. But I noticed on the right-hand side there was a great chunk of ice, of corniced ice, hanging over the Kangchung face, probably 15,000 feet of it. And I had no idea whether it would remain in place when I put weight onto it. But I crawled inside and I wriggled and jammed my way out and finally pulled out onto the top. And then I knew for the first time, I was confident we were going to get to the summit. Tenzing joined me and we made our way. I cut steps all the way along the ridge again. And then up to the right was a rounded, snowy bump. I chip-stepped up that, Tenzing following close behind. And finally, we stood on top of the world.
Where they were was where no other human beings had been before, the very top of the world. Many people assume this photo shows Hillary. In fact, Hillary took the photo of Tenzing. He didn't think that his friend even knew how to use a camera, and it didn't occur to him to get a souvenir.
But there's one question that a lot of people always wanted to know the answer to. Tuakau third former Stacey King on email to Sir Edmund.
Who got to the top first, you or Tenzing?
Another good question from Tuakau School. Ed, who did get to the top first?
Well, you know, the mountaineers, to them that's a matter of no consequence. We were a team, we were working together, and we had carried out all the challenges together. But when we got back to Kathmandu, there was a great deal of pressure from the media, more or less to prove that Tenzing, the local boy, had reached the summit first. So we had a little gathering of John Hunt and Tenzing and myself, and we agreed that we would say we reached the summit almost together. And that's the way I've done it for years and years until recently, until I finally decided I might as well tell the truth. Tenzing had already mentioned in his book, and the fact did remain that I led all the way along the summit ridge, and just with Tenzing following close behind, up onto the top of the mountain itself.
Well, let's hear now from someone else who has been up to the top of that mountain, your son, Peter Hillary.
What my father and Tenzing Norgay accomplished back in 1953 was extraordinary. They climbed into the unknown. I mean, physiologists debated, was it possible for human beings to climb Mount Everest without wearing a pressure suit? That's just how high the mountain is. The symbolism of Mount Everest, of achieving that goal, is remarkable. And Ed Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the guys who got there. And in many respects, that climb is incredibly symbolic of people being able to achieve things that they never thought they could achieve before.
The news was raced down the mountain, and the team's success was splashed across every newspaper in Britain.
The news that Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing had reached the summit of Mount Everest couldn't have come at a better moment. It reached London on the morning of the Queen's coronation and provided a wonderful start to a great day. There'd not been much to celebrate in the immediate post-war years, and this was something that everybody appreciated.
When I was growing up around about that time, I desperately wanted to be an explorer, and I wanted to find the source of the Amazon. I wanted to climb Everest, And I was only 10 years old, and the Earth was rapidly being explored. And I can remember thinking when they got to the top of Everest, it was a mixture of regret that, oh, someone's done it, and extraordinary excitement at the achievement itself. So I don't think anything beats it in my lifetime as a sort of nature moment that I can think of.
As the expedition made its way back to Kathmandu, a messenger had a dispatch for Hillary, and from it he learnt of his knighthood. After that, the conquerors of Everest were honoured wherever they went.
There he is. Nice to see you.
The members of the 53 expedition had met many times since their triumph, but one of the most special reunions was 10 years ago, when they all converged on Nepal to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the climb.
I'm 40 years old.
Well, he's mellowed. He's not quite so dynamic as he used to be, but that's a very good thing, because he was an absolute dynamo, and thank goodness we had him with us, because it needed that to get us to the top.
Photographs.
Sadly, this was the last time John Hunt saw Everest. He died 4 years ago at the age of 88.
When young Ed Hillary knocked Everest off, he became internationally famous immediately. All around him and Tenzing, the mad world of celebrity exploded. Now, two New Zealanders who have experienced something of this are Dame Susan Devoy and Colin Meads, of course. International celebrity, international fame at a very young age. How difficult would that have been for him, Colin, at 33?
Oh, it must have been tremendously difficult, because it was a world-renowned achievement, and he wasn't not only well known in New Zealand, he was known throughout the world just by one great achievement on one great day.
That's right. He must have been very level-headed, don't you think?
Oh, I think that's what the amazing thing about Sir Edmund is, and
you know, example to all us sports people who've been fortunate enough to sort of experience international success, is that it needn't affect you, and it's never changed him as a person. And you know, he's just a wonderful example for all of us to be like that.
It's amazing how he coped, isn't it? Just quickly, what did your son say to him once?
Oh, very politely, he said, "You must be really rich for an old fella." And Sir Edmund said, "Why is that, son?" He said, "'Cause you got your face on all the $5 notes."
We are coming to you tonight from Avalon. Mark Sainsbury is still with Sir Edmund there under the protection from the sun in Kathmandu.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And of course, Sir Ed was really tickled to hear Pine Tree talking there, because we now have with us someone who, what Colin Meads was to rugby, this man certainly is to modern mountaineering. Reinhold Messner, a climber who, the first climber to climb Everest without oxygen, and someone who I know Sir Ed greatly admires. Reinhold, how much easier does it make it for climbers like yourself that someone else has gone up there first?
That's very important. Without Sir Ed and Tenzing going up before, nobody else could be followed. First, you need who is breaking the trail. It's clear that the trail the next time is not there, but Sir Ed and Tenzing, they found the route. They did the last steps. So they showed to the whole world the last piece, the most difficult piece, is possible. Following is easy. Going ahead is very difficult.
Reinhold is my most respected mountaineer.
Thanks.
And of course, after that climb, we look at you know, the success and things that goes with it. How do you think he's weathered that?
I did not perfectly understand.
How do you think he's weathered the success and all the attention, not only from climbers but from other people?
You see, after Sir Ed's ascent came other ascents like the Swiss, the Indian climbers in '65. The most important ascent 10 years later was the American one, doing the traverse from the West Ridge to the southeast side. Afterwards, Chris Bonington did the southwest face. What was a big deal. Peter Haber and myself, we could do the first oxygen-less ascent. We didn't use bottled oxygen. It was possible 25 years later because we knew so many things about Everest. And afterwards, we did the Kangchung phase, beautiful ascents, some routes on the north side. And only after all these new lines, there came in mass tourism, or what you call the commercial expeditions. And this is a totally different approach which we have today.
But there still is respect, of course, for Sir Ed and his climb. And I suppose if you were thinking about this as a movie, if you were going to turn that into it, Sir Edmund Hillary would be really the true-life action hero.
If I was going to make a movie about Ed Hillary, I don't think there's anybody out there that could play Ed. I mean, he's a pretty unique character. I don't know any actors that are as big as Ed, both personality-wise or just in stature. You know, he's a big guy physically, and he's a big guy in every possible way.
When you think of Ed Hillary, I mean, here is a humble beekeeper, is that how I remember? And I used to keep bees, so I remember that pretty well. But Ed somehow has been able to remain sort of still the average guy. He's like Colin Meads. I'd sort of pair him with Colin in terms of really remaining like a New Zealanders would fondly think of what New Zealanders are.
Namaste, Sir Edmund. I gather you're in Kathmandu, and I and many others who love Nepal believe that although your conquest of the summit of Everest was a wonderful achievement, what you have done since those days for the people of Nepal has been every bit as great an achievement. Good luck to you, and may you win as much support as possible to keep your good work going on.
Welcome back to our studio at Avalon and on top of the world. Now, people who have stood on the summit of Chomolungma, Mount Everest, speak of their sense of awe. They speak of the majesty of the view. They speak of the light. They speak also of being emotionally overtaken, of tears welling in their eyes. And many people who have summited speak also of deciding as they stood there that they would become better people, that they'd be kinder to other people, they'd live their lives differently. And perhaps Sir Edmund felt something of this because it was while he was in the Himalayas for the first time, he saw that the local Sherpas lived in conditions of appalling poverty, and he decided to do something about it.
Nepal is the third poorest country in the world. Its people continue to struggle. Sir Edmund has raised millions of dollars for Nepal over the years, building hospitals and schools and providing scholarships for young Sherpas. For nearly 50 years, it's been almost a full-time job, one that has, on occasion, involved his entire family.
There we were, it was like the family dream to go to Nepal, to set up house there. We had a lovely sort of suburban home in the valley of Kathmandu. We were going to build a second hospital at Paflu at just over 8,000 feet. And, you know, everything looked just perfect.
But the dream was about to turn into a nightmare. Flying to meet Sir Edmund in the Himalayas, the plane carrying Hillary's wife Louise and their youngest daughter Belinda crashed on takeoff, killing everyone on board.
It was a shattering thing. Our family was cut in half. We had to learn to try to communicate again. The real glue of our family, my mother and my younger sister, had been killed, and I think for many years it was very difficult for any of us to come to terms with it. And I think it's more what you make of the situation and how you go on and cope with it that is the true hallmark of what it's all about.
For several years, Hillary immersed himself in his work with the Sherpas as a way of working through his grief. Then, 10 years on, a new challenge presented itself. In 1985, Prime Minister David Lange appointed Sir Edmund New Zealand High Commissioner to India and Ambassador to Nepal.
He epitomised New Zealand on the subcontinent, not just India, all through there. He'd not only climbed the world's highest mountain, he'd taken a New Zealand-made jet boat up the Ganges right to its source. So he made a very good ambassador in Nepal, splendid High Commissioner in Delhi. He was a triumph.
Even while occupying this position, Hillary continued working for the people of the Himalayas, now accompanied by his wife June. However, age had started to make travel to higher altitudes ever more taxing. In 1991, he was struck down by altitude sickness that nearly killed him. But despite the dangers to his health, he keeps going back. It is this dedication to the people whose fathers and grandfathers helped him climb Everest 50 years ago that makes Sir Edmund Hillary so regarded in Nepal even today.
Well, Sir Edmund is here today in Kathmandu, not just with his own immediate family, but as we've said, his wider family, the Sherpa family, because not only the associations of 53, since then successive generations have benefited from the work Sir Edmund Hillary has done here. And one of those people, one of the first to graduate through those Hillary schools is Angrita Sherpa. Angrita, why did it start?
Well, when Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed Mount Everest in 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary came back to Khumbu again and again. And in one occasion, he was, having a good talk with his old friends. And those days we did not have any schools, no medical care. And Sir Edmund Hillary, he wanted to help to some extent and asked one of his good friends, if there's anything I could help to the Sherpa people, what there would be, was his question. And, we are very lucky that the answer from the Sherpa came very good for us. He said that our children have eyes, but they are still blind. They cannot see. So we need a school in the village of Kumjung. And Sir Edmund Hillary responded to this request and built the first school in Kumjung in 1960. And there I was one of the first batch of students to go to the school there.
Thank you, Angrita. But it went on from there, didn't it? Because we have also with us Lady June Hillary. I mean, that was the first of the schools, and both you and your family have been involved all the way through. Why was it important?
It's always been important to us because it was such a good idea, and because we've always loved coming over to Nepal. Since 1961 we've been coming. And so the schools were built. We had 27 schools now we've built, with the help of the local people, and largely with the help of the local people, and a couple of hospitals. And so it's gone on, and now we keeping on doing what we have to do. We're in touch all the time with Angrita on the email. I've become very good on the email.
Well, I think also that in terms of that keeping on, that back in Wellington, Paul may have some news for us on that front.
Well done, Mark, indeed so, and it looks like the most wonderful celebration in the grounds of the British Embassy in Kathmandu. Well, yes, a special announcement. Tonight's a special night for another reason. To mark the anniversary of Sir Edmund's assault on Everest 50 years ago, we have with us the Prime Minister, Helen Clark, who is somebody who quite literally has been known to climb a few peaks in her time. Do you sometimes think about what Hillary was doing? I mean, you've been up, 20,000 feet, Kilimanjaro. You've done some serious climbing. Does that give you a greater appreciation of what he did?
It certainly does. I've stood on the rim at 6,000 metres, and there isn't much air at 6,000, so what it was like to go where Ed went with the kind of equipment they had half a century ago, one can only imagine. It was a fantastic achievement.
Where do you place him as a New Zealander? Where do you place him on our landscape in our history?
Well, I was 3 years and 3 months old when Ed climbed that mountain, and so from the time I can remember anything, I can remember Sir Edmund Hillary, a Kiwi, the first to get to the top. So I guess for my generation of Kiwis, he's been the greatest. Sure, we learned about Lord Rutherford, who split the atom, and that was somewhat academic, but this man's achievements we could really identify with.
Now, you have a very special announcement to make to us tonight.
We do, and I'm aware that Ed, looking to the future, wants to know that the work of the Himalayan Trust is secure. We gave that some thought. Since 1965, when it was set up, the New Zealand governments have put in around $40,000 a year. That will be increasing from now by another $250,000 a year to $290,000 a year to help the Trust.
And that is, as far as you can tell, in perpetuity.
Let's hope that all governments keep that commitment.
A wonderful announcement then from Helen Clark that'll help make sure that Sir Edmund's work carries on, and we better get some reaction, Mark, from you and Sir Ed and June in Kathmandu.
Thanks, Paul, and I was a very excited Sir Ed when that news came through. You've said you don't want statues, you don't want monuments, you wanted the work of the Himalayan Trust to continue. An extra $290,000 a year, is that going to help make it work?
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic.
Fantastic.
I'd very much like to thank the Prime Minister and the people of New Zealand for that support. To me, that is the most important thing that can happen. The welfare of our Sherpa friends, everything else is secondary.
Well, that is amazing news here in Kathmandu, and as we see the Sherpas behind us, there's a big party tonight. This will be a cause for a lot of celebration, and Sir Ed is going to continue on from here. We must be, just before we go, thank very much the Ambassador, Mr. Keith Bloomfield, and his wife, Genevieve, for their hospitality here. We'd like to thank all his friends, and we'd particularly like to thank Sir Edmund Hillary for being the person he is. Well done.
Wonderful, Mark Sainsbury. Thank you, Sir Edmund. Thank you, Lady Hillary. And what a wonderful party it looks like becoming there with so many of his friends and admirers there in the grounds of the British Embassy. As Tenzing Norgay himself said after the climb in 1953, "I have climbed my mountain and now I must live my life." And so it was for Sir Edmund Hillary. He climbed his mountain at the young age of 33, and his life since has been one of achievement and service. This has been our tribute to a man we've applauded over the years, a man who carried the name of New Zealand to the highest point of the world, a man for so many reasons we have come to love. Sir Edmund Hillary, who climbed Mount Everest 50 years ago today. From Avalon, good night.
He's a professional.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.